Welcome back to the Pump Take Sports Hockey Show with Lucas and Alex. Today we're going to be talking about the NHL Midseason Awards and the brand new NHL ESPN television deal. But first of all, we're going to introduce a new thing that we're going to be doing on the show called Beer of the Week. So every week we're going to drink a different beer throughout the show, and at the end of the episode we'll rank it on a scale of 1 to 10 based on our personal preference. This week we're starting off with the classic James Ready. Let's give these a crack. Delicious as always. Anyway, so let's get into a little bit of mid-season awards action here. So I think I'll start off by reminding people who my preseason award predictions were, and we're going to compare those to now what we think halfway through the season, because a lot of them are very different. In fact, all of them are different from my original predictions, unfortunately. So I think we'll start off with the Hart Trophy. My preseason prediction for the Hart Trophy was Nathan MacKinnon. That was a very popular pick going into this season because he was kind of viewed as being due for a MVP award, and he's just been one of the best players in the league for many years, for the past few years anyway. But now mid-season awards, my pick is Connor McDavid. I think Connor McDavid is just the correct answer here. I think it's hard to argue against for anyone else. I mean, I know that Patrick Kane and Austin Matthews have had good starts to their seasons as well, but Connor McDavid with 52 points is so far and away running away with the scoring race in the NHL that it's tough to argue, to make an argument against that and argue for anyone else. But we'll see if Alex has a differing opinion here.
Do you remember that thing that you said about how there's only one right answer?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all I'm going to say on that. I've got Connor McDavid as well. The way I see it, Edmonton is always going to, well, at least this year, they'll be floating around second or third in the North Division, depending on how the Leafs and the Jets do. Either way, they're going to be in that top three. But if McDavid goes down with injury, the Oilers are plain and simple fucked. Like, they have Draisaitl. Draisaitl's great, and he'll be able to pick up whatever weight McDavid loses if he gets injured or something like that. But either way, McDavid goes down, the Oilers go down. And I think that's a perfect way to exemplify what it means to be the most valuable player on a team.
Absolutely. So, can't agree more. The Oilers, the biggest argument against Connor McDavid in past seasons has just been that the Oilers' lack of success. But no one doubts that Connor McDavid is probably the most talented player in the league. He's always consistently up there and at the top or near the top of league scoring. And this year he's just running away with it by such a wide margin. He has 52 points, and the next closest guy to him is Leon Draisaitl, who has 45. So it's tough to argue against Connor McDavid at this point in the season, especially when the Oilers are sitting in a playoff spot currently. Yeah.
And to those who say that, try to argue against him because of the Oilers' lack of success, to that I raise you, imagine how bad they would be without McDavid.
Exactly.
Like, you can, like, sure, they're not at the top of the league. They're not going on an absolute fucking tear. They're not really competing with like Tampa Bay, Vegas, like teams like that, but they're in a playoff spot. And if they didn't have McDavid, they could probably be bottom half of the league. So, yeah.
And I know a lot of people are trying to make a case for Patrick Kane too, because he's been having an absolutely phenomenal season, and the Blackhawks have been overachieving extremely this year so far. A lot of the reason being Patrick Kane's success. But I just think that Connor McDavid's accolades and stats so far this season are just so far and ahead above the rest of the league that it's just hard to argue against him.
He's also the team captain and everything. Like, if they lose McDavid, not only are they losing those 52 points, but they're also losing just the face of the Edmonton Oilers. So
exactly,
there's a lot of reasons going into it. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. McDavid's definitely the MVP this year so far.
All right, so let's move on to the Norris Trophy top defenseman so far. My pick going into the season is looking very cold. Miro Heiskanen was my pick at the beginning of the season. I thought that with the Dallas Stars going to the Stanley Cup Finals last year, and Miro Heiskanen being one of their best players during that Stanley Cup Final run, I thought Miro Heiskanen was going to maintain that level of play or even increase it going into this season. And I thought he was going to take a huge step and become one of the top defensemen in the league. However, that has not panned out. I believe he still is goalless so far this year with 9 assists. So it's tough to make an argument for a player like that, especially where Dallas is sitting in the standings. So my current pick, again, not a very exciting or glamorous pick for this award, but I'm going with Victor Hedman, the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's been the best defenseman in the league for years now, and I think his particularly his offensive stats so far this season, he's leading the league defenseman in scoring with 5 goals and 21 assists for 26 points. He's a +8, and he's averaging 25 minutes of time on ice per game. So it's hard to argue against Victor Hedman, who just does it all for the Tampa Bay Lightning. He plays in every situation. He's solid defensively, and he puts up the offensive numbers that he does. What do you think?
Well, I wasn't officially a part of the Pump Take crew when I made my preseason predictions, but I will go on the record just to compare anyways. The guy that I had winning the Norris this year at the start of the year was Cale Makar. And I think that was a decent pick at the time because he was incredible in his sample size last year. He missed a little bit of time with injury, but he stepped up huge for the Avalanche in the playoffs as well. Almost a point per game player as a defenseman in his rookie season at 21 or 22 years old. So that's, I thought he was going to take another massive step forward this year. Unfortunately, the injury bugs bit him, and he's only played in 15 games this year. So it's not looking like he'll be even in contention for the Norris unless he comes back soon and rips it up. Having said that, my current prediction is not someone I ever thought that I would ever predict to win a Norris Trophy in the NHL. I'm going with Jeff Petrie, the Montreal Canadiens. And the reason I say that is because when you think of stars on the Habs back end, first name that comes to mind is Shea Weber. He's their captain. He's got the booming clapper. He's always good for 40 to 50 points a year. And he's utilized in that physical defensive role as well. So you think of Habs defense and you think of Shea Weber, but Shea Weber has not had that good a season this year, at least to his standards. He's only got 12 points in 27 games so far. And from what I've heard, his defensive game's taken a bit of a step back this year as well. And guess who stepped up and filled that role? None other than Jeff Petrie. He is leading the Montreal Canadiens in points right now. He's got 25 points in 27 games, 11 goals. And he's being used in all situations. And I know when people think of the Habs' success this year, they think of Tyler Toffoli and Josh Anderson and guys like that. But truth be told, I don't think the Habs are in the position they are if Jeff Petrie isn't having the season that he's had so far. I just think that he's taken a complete step forward. He's an entirely different defenseman than what we've seen in years past. And I think that he's been their Shea Weber this year. So moving forward, I think Jeff Petrie's my midseason pick for Norris.
I like that pick because Jeff Petrie's a guy that, like, earlier on in his career, especially when he was with the Oilers, like, he never would have even been considered it remotely in the conversation for the Norris Trophy. But since he's gotten to the Habs, he's totally, like, come out of nowhere and taken a huge step forward and become one of the best offensive defensemen in the league. So yeah, I'm into that pick. I don't think I just wonder if he's going to be able to maintain that level of success for the rest of the season. But that's kind of my bias against just the Jeff Petrie name, because I've watched him play so much throughout his career and I've never seen him play at this level. So I wonder to myself, is this really Jeff Petrie, or is this just a nice little hot start for him for the season? But yeah, I think you could easily make an argument that so far this season, if they were giving out the Norris Trophy today, I think he'd be a finalist, if not the winner. So
I had that exact concern. I did my quarter season predictions for the awards on the Shannon podcast, my other show. And I had Jeff Petrie winning the Norris then as well. And I was thinking, okay, so this is why we call it the quarter season predictions. Jeff Petrie's great right now, but how is he going to be halfway through the season? How is he going to be 3/4 of the way through? And he's still proving me wrong. We're halfway through the season. He's still my pick. So as of now, I think it's still his to lose, but we'll see where he is 28 games from now.
All right. Let's move on to the Vezina Trophy here. Top goaltender so far, halfway through the season. My pick for this is also not looking good at this point necessarily. So my preseason pick for the Vezina was Frederick Anderson of the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Leafs have been successful, and Frederick Anderson has been winning a lot of games, but it's hard to argue that the Leafs' success has anything to do with Frederick Anderson's play. He's been solid enough to, like, maintain the Leafs' success and ensure that they're still able to maintain that number one standing in the North Division. But he has hardly been outstanding by any stretch this season so far.
His save percentage after last night's game is now at .899. So
yeah, I saw that. So yeah, it's like obviously he would have to completely turn his season around and in order to make a case for the Vezina. So that is very unlikely to happen. So my current pick for the Vezina, I was torn between two guys here, but I'm going with Marc-Andre Fleury. I think Marc-Andre Fleury has been one of the best goalies, and he's had some ups and downs through his career, but he's been one of the best goalies for the past decade and a half in the NHL. And, you know, I think he's kind of a guy that it would be nice to see him win it. And his stats this year just totally back up his case to win this award. He's got a record of 14-5 right now for Vegas. He's got a .935 save percentage and a 181 goals against average. Those are absolutely stellar numbers. With Robin Lehner out with an injury, Marc-Andre Fleury has completely stepped up and ensured that the Vegas Golden Knights season wasn't going to be all for lost with Lehner out. And Fleury's just been that solid, outstanding goalie that we've seen him be in Pittsburgh for certain stretches of his career. And hopefully this is the year that he can actually pull it off. I wanted to mention the other guy that I was strongly considering for this was Philip Grubauer of the Colorado Avalanche, who has also had outstanding numbers, but across the board, Marc-Andre Fleury's stats were just slightly better than Grubauer's. So that's my case for Fleury.
Well, it's funny that you say that your decision came down to Philip Grubauer and Marc-Andre Fleury, because I had the same decision and I ended up going with Grubauer for my pick. So the reason I think Grubauer is going to win it this year is because Colorado Avalanche haven't really been as good as we thought they'd be this year. They are fourth in the West Division right now. Minnesota is second place. So I don't know about you, but I thought Colorado and Minnesota would have been swapped by now. Like Minnesota kind of on the outside looking in, and not on the outside looking in, but kind of more direly hanging on to a playoff spot, while Colorado is in a safe spot. But no, Colorado's in fourth place right now. And I think coming out of last season, there was a general belief with the Avs that Philip Grubauer and Pavel Francouz, I think he's injured right now, but he's typically their backup goalie. They're both good goalies, but neither of them were really elite. I think heading into this season, it's like, okay, you've got these two guys, but can either of them carry the workload of a true number one goalie and be that guy for them in the playoffs? And Grubauer's essentially said, fuck you to those people, because heading into this season, where we are right now, he's got a record of 14-7-0, goals against average of 195, save percentage of 920. Those are Vezina numbers, in my opinion, and I truthfully think that if Grubauer isn't having the season that he's having right now, Colorado's not in a playoff spot. And I never thought I'd be saying that, because Colorado's got, I think, one of the best teams in the Western Conference, not just the West Division, but under normal circumstances, the Western Conference. And I don't know. I just like they're 4 points ahead of whoever's the fifth team, Arizona or LA, actually the hottest team in hockey. They're 4 points ahead of LA right now. And I know there's been a number of times this year where Grubauer's bailed the Avs out. So if he's not having as good a season as he is right now, who knows where they are. So that's why I think he deserves the Vezina.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Philip Grubauer's case for the Vezina is very similar to what Connor Hellebuck's was last year, sort of the fact that he is the backbone and the reason that team had any sort of success at all. Because it's hard to argue, like it's hard to say that I'm not surprised that Colorado is doing as poorly as they have been so far this season. But Grubauer has held them in it, and you would have to think that eventually, guys like McKinnon and Rantanen and the rest of their team are going to figure it out a little bit more, and Colorado will probably end up finishing in the top three in the West Division, I think, by the end of the season. But the fact that they're still hanging on to a playoff spot and they're still in that conversation for top team in the West is a big part of the reason for that is Philip Grubauer. So yeah, he has taken a huge step this year, and it would be nice to see him win it. But I still think I just think Fleury's numbers across the board were just better in every category by a slight little margin. So I had to go with Fleury. And
Fleury did step up big in Robin Lehner's absence, like you said. So that's a no disagreement for me. I think it's either of theirs to lose.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to our last award that we're going to talk about today. That's the Calder Trophy Rookie of the Year. My preseason pick for this was Igor Shesterkin. Now, I knew that this was a risky pick to take at the beginning of the season because goalies are very hard to predict, especially young goalies. I thought Igor Shesterkin was a safer pick for goaltenders because of the fact that he had played so many years in the KHL prior to this season. So I thought, his experience against men and playing professional hockey would put him in a good position to be a consistent goaltender, but he has not lived up to the hype so far in New York. The Rangers are having a tough start to the season. So I think the Calder Trophy is very undisputed at this point. It has to be Kirill Kaprizov. He's got 10 goals, 13 assists for 23 points. He's been Minnesota's best player so far this season. And another guy that also spent a lot of his career playing in the KHL and playing professional hockey before this season. So I think his experience at that level playing in the KHL will allow him to sort of finish this season just as strong as he started it. So I think it's hard to argue against Kirill Kaprizov being our Rookie of the Year this year.
Yeah, and you honestly just took the words right out of my mouth. There's no real other option than Kirill Kaprizov this year. I think the thing with him is I'm not taking anything away from him, but I think the league needs to readjust the rules for how old you can be, or not even how old you can be, but how many years of professional experience you can have under your belt before you can be considered for Rookie of the Year. He is in the exact same position as Artemi Panarin was a couple years ago when he won the Calder Trophy. Kaprizov's played in the KHL for, I think, 4 seasons before this year. So he's no stranger to playing against grown men. He hasn't had to work out the kinks in his development. He's already done that. He's an established hockey player at this point. So while I still think he deserves it because he still falls under the criteria, I think the league's got to look at adjusting that in the future, because otherwise, my preseason pick heading into this year was Tim Stootzell. And while Stootzell's been great this year, 16 points, I think, in 27 games, my main problem with him, well, not my problem with him, but I think the reason he's not going to win Rookie of the Year is just because the Sens fucking suck. And I think if you put Stootzell on a team like Minnesota, where they're not even like, they don't even have to be a top team in the league, but just a team that's further ahead of Ottawa and a team where he can surround himself with better players, I think he would win the Rookie of the Year. But Stootzell's situation in Ottawa, they just have not been a good team at all this year. So I think you'll see a better version of Stootzell in the years coming in the future. But as of now, I think it's definitely Kaprizov's to lose.
Yeah, when it comes to the Calder Trophy, though, I don't think team success has any real impact on a voter's decision.
No.
What it might have an impact on is just their overall production on the season.
That's exactly
so
what
if that's what you're saying, yeah. Because Tim Stootzell, the guy is a dynamic player. He's great to watch, and Sens fans should be just loving what they're seeing from Tim Stootzell.
You can see 90-point potential in him when you watch him play.
Absolutely.
He's going to be a superstar someday.
Absolutely. So I think, if they had, I agree with you that the Calder Trophy rules should be changed, because it does kind of irritate me when a guy like Kirill Kaprizov, who is an established professional hockey player and has been for years, comes into the league and just steals it away from a great young, 19-year-old hockey player like Tim Stootzell, who really kind of encompasses what it means to be a rookie a little bit more. Mm-hmm. That does annoy me, in the same way that when Artemi Panarin won it as well, it was kind of almost want to say an asterisk here, but
who was in the contention it was Panarin?
McDavid? Was that McDavid? Yeah, that was the McDavid year.
And then one other guy, I forget who it was.
I couldn't tell you, but I just remember it was between Panarin and McDavid, mm-hmm. and McDavid only had played half the season, which was tough, which was hurt his case a little bit too. He only played 40 games before Brandon Manning checked him into the boards. Remember that? And he broke his collarbone.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, I think any other year, McDavid should have won it that year. I still believe, even though he only played half the season, his numbers supported the fact that he was Rookie of the Year, despite the fact he only played half a season. And also, I think a guy like Artemi Panarin, who was 23, 24 at the time, and had been playing in the KHL for years, shouldn't be eligible for the award.
No, I agree. And just to complete the point there, the other contender for Rookie of the Year in that season was Shane Gostisbehere. So
Gostisbehere, yeah, he had a great rookie season.
He had a very good. His rookie season was really stemmed from the second half. I remember they called him up and he just snapped. So
yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to some other big NHL news here. This is off-ice news. For those of you that don't know, all of our Canadian fans might not care too much about what we have to say about this, but overall, this new deal that the NHL signed with ESPN and the Walt Disney Company is huge for the brand of the NHL and for their marketing potential. So I'll go through a few of the details of this new ESPN deal that the NHL signed. So previously, the NHL had a 10-year deal worth $2 billion over the course of the 10 years with NBC, and that expires this year. So they needed to sign a new deal, and they signed it with ESPN. So this is the first time the NHL has had this TV deal with ESPN since 2004, and it's a 7-year TV streaming and media rights deal with the Walt Disney Company, which includes ESPN, ABC, and the streaming service Hulu. It's worth $400 million a year, which works out to like 2.8 billion over the course of the 7 years. And it includes 100 regular season nationally televised games on ESPN, and out-of-market games also available on ESPN+. Also, another reminder of this deal too is that there's still a remainder of TV rights for the other games that I didn't mention, so that don't fall under the 100 regular season games that are under the ESPN deal, that are still open for negotiation with NBC and or Fox going forward. So the NHL can still sign another television rights deal as well to add more to their revenue. But overall, the NHL is now making double the money that they were making from their ESPN deal over the next 7 years. And the potential for ESPN to really grow the brand of the NHL is just enormous. While the NHL was the number one product that was being broadcasted on NBC, I think it's better to be the 4th or 5th ranked product on ESPN than it is to be the number one on any other market, because ESPN is the largest sports network in the world, and just being able to have them promote your product and social media presence and all those other things, it's just going to be huge for the NHL. What do you think of this deal?
Yeah, you, I think, hit the nail on the head when you said it's better to be the 4th or 5th most viewed product on ESPN than the 1st most viewed product on NBC. I guarantee you that if you were to go to some random American in the street, not knowing anything about them, and you were to ask them, if you were to come up with a sports network, which one comes to mind? I guarantee you 10 out of 10, they say ESPN before they say NBC Sports. Mm-hmm. And ESPN is just, they're the main outlet for that kind of shit in the States. I mean, I know that's kind of a Captain Obvious statement, but they are in the States what TSN and Sportsnet are to us here in Canada. And while NBC does offer a good product, I think the NHL's in a position, especially with the pandemic and everything, where they're losing money. So signing a deal like this is fucking huge for them. Absolutely huge for them. They, I know that fans in Canada are kind of clamoring at the thought of Stephen A. Smith talking about hockey. And while I don't know if that's ever actually going to happen, I know for a fact if he were to talk about hockey, I would tune in. I want to hear what that guy has to say about hockey. I've seen him ramble enough about basketball and football. And even if I don't really follow either of those sports, I know he's a character for sure. So I'd love to hear what he has to say about hockey. But even then, I think the NHL really needs to appeal to a certain group of people in the States. And I think since they don't make money quite at the rate that the NBA and the NFL do, I think signing a deal with the nation's biggest sports network is going to do wonders for them and helping them kind of expand to the people that only watch basketball and football. Because even if you're not a big hockey fan, and even if they don't mention hockey and talk about hockey at the rate they do the NBA and the NFL, you're going to have people watching just with ESPN in their house at home, and they'll hear something about hockey. They'll be like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I'll tune into another game. And it's kind of like a chain reaction in that sense. Like,
exactly.
You start off, ESPN, your favorite sports network, says something about hockey. So maybe you tune into a game, maybe you watch a game, and then you realize you really like it. You start watching more games. Like, I think it's a real chain reaction sort of thing for the NHL. And I think they made a great move in signing this deal with ESPN.
I totally agree. It's so great because when a sports fan wants to have sports on at their house, what are they going to put on? They're not putting on NBC. No. They're putting on ESPN, right? But when you're watching ESPN, before the NHL had no presence on ESPN, so there was no promotion for that. Like I was, for example, a sports fan sitting down probably doesn't even know how or where to watch hockey, even if they wanted to. The casual fans certainly wouldn't, because they wouldn't even want to take the initiative to even try to find hockey. Whereas like if ESPN's playing and they say, stay tuned at 7 o'clock for the Flyers and Bruins game that's on, then that's just going to then automatically play on ESPN while people are just sitting down watching sports, right? Whereas like NBC before, you would have to like go and find a hockey game and actively like seek out watching hockey. So for the casual fan, hockey was just not even in their realm of thought when they were watching sports. But now this gives them more of an opportunity to like sort of promote their brand. Another thing too is that on morning highlights for SportsCenter, NHL highlights were kind of relegated to like the very like basement or the very last highlights. You know, they might just be like, oh, by the way, here's a cool goal from Connor McDavid of the Edmonton Oilers, and everyone else have a good day. Like that would be the extent of the highlights that the NHL would get on SportsCenter. But now that ESPN has those rights, they're going to try to promote that a little bit more. They're going to be like showing some highlights on a consistent basis because it's mutually beneficial for both ESPN and for the NHL. Also, if you follow ESPN on Instagram, they almost never post anything about hockey. But now that they have the media rights deal for this, they're going to be able to promote those things, and people that follow that Instagram are going to be like, hey, that's a pretty cool like fight, or that's a cool goal, and like maybe I should tune into the Panthers game tonight because Barkov looks pretty cool. Like,
if I am the ESPN social media coordinator, the first thing I'm doing is posting hockey fights because I don't care. I don't care what sports you follow. I don't care what kind of a sports fan you are. The easiest way to appeal to a fan that doesn't necessarily watch the sport you want them to is to show them a fight. Whether that's in any sport. People won't watch I know so many people that won't sit down and watch a 3-hour baseball game, but the minute you show them a bench brawl, or like a dugouts clearing, everyone meeting at the mound and everything, like that'll get them hooked, and that'll potentially lead to them following the sport a little more. Absolutely.
This deal is just so much more than just the $4 million per year for the NHL that the ESPN's paying them to. Yeah. Just the amount of exposure that the NHL is going to get from this deal, and the potential for them to really reach new markets. It's huge for the league. Good job, Gary Bettman. You did well. This is a very exciting time for the NHL. We're not going to really get to see the benefits of it very much because we're in Canada and we got plenty of TV deals up here. But for the States, for hockey fans down south, you should be excited because you're going to get some good coverage of the NHL now.
I agree.
Should we finish off here with our rating of the JRs here?
I think it's about
finish mine off here.
I'm already bone dry empty here. So,
well, I'd like to start off by saying 5.5% alcohol, higher alcohol content than most beers, especially a low budget lager beer like this. It tastes a little bit stronger than most of those light beers that you might get, such as like Molson or Bud. And it's only like $37 for a 2-4. So I'm gonna obviously this is one of my favorite beers. That's why I picked it. This is my go-to like cheap beer. I'm gonna give it an 8 because it's not like a delicious like tasty craft beer that would warrant a 10. But everything else, best bang for your buck, 8 out of 10 for me.
You know what? I'm just going to go right out and give James Reddy a 10 out of 10. This is the first beer that I've ever had where it's made me into a returning customer every single time I go to the beer store. And while there are tastier beers out there, the taste is good enough to a point where I'd consider it to be a strength of the beer. And when I think of all the strengths, I can't find any weaknesses with JR. You've got the 5.5, you've got the taste, you've got the price. It's just, there's nothing wrong with James Reddy. I've got no gripes with it, so I feel like it wouldn't make sense to give it anything other than a 10.
All right, you convince me. I'll give it a 10 too because my personal brand is kind of like associated with JR. So I was the one that showed it to you and stuff. But anyway, best bang for your buck, JR. Check it out. Anyway,
this episode is unofficially brought to you by James Reddy.
Yeah, unofficially. If James Reddy wants to sponsor us, that'd be awesome. Maybe I'll hit up their CEO after we're done recording here. Exactly. Anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next week on Pump Take Sports Hockey.